Hi, I'm in denial, and having recently received a prostate examination from Edward Scissorhands, I know all about pain, pleasure and tetanus shots. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to really test my prostate with a simple challenge. Can you beat Red Dead Redemption 2 using only your fists? Simple challenges require two things: simple rules and a mentally challenged / inept participant.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in...
And I have all three of those things right here, so let's proceed. Rule 1. I shall fist until thou kingdom comes, and you, my friend, are my kingdom. Rule 2. In Red Dead 2, the fist button also prompts a kick and also a headbutt. In this case, both my feet and forehead shall be considered feet because Arthur Morgan is built different. Rule 3. Some QuickTime or Deadeye events require mandatory gun use whether I consent to it or not. I will do my best, which is many's least, to avoid this, but sometimes you just gotta wipe your ass with whatever's nearest, living or otherwise. And Rule 4. I may fist with my pistol clenched. I'm not hitting with the pistol. The pistol is merely a force multiplier. This is the way of the world, and the world has a bigger dick than you, so don't argue. So as my doctor once said, please don't masturbate in the waiting room. In this run, we'll be playing as Mr. Fister. Favourite pastimes include horse riding, dancing, and sodomizing small animals. He's also great with children. On the run from suspected various anal intercourse related charges, our gang is camping out on Brokeback Mountain. Dutch, the head gangbanger, and I head out to meet up with Micah, a walking skid mark with remnants of corn from last night's dinner. He led us to a cabin which we hoped would hold a plentiful supply of Vaseline because the cold weather made my penis invert inside myself and I needed something to help ease it back out. I mean supplies for the camp. I also drew a cock in the snow. Turns out the cabin is infested with O'Driscolls, a scummy inbred lot of incestuous anal beads and arch rival of Dutch Oven. This would be the first test of Mr. Fister's abilities, and so forth, the fisting did commence. Much fun was had by all 10 of my digits as they hurtled toward the O'Driscoll's anuses / ani, and they were soon on first name terms with their colons. There was no Vaseline in the cabin, so I'd hoped the barn would hold the penis ointment I so desperately required. Instead, an attempt was made to defile my plump and sumptuous asshole, but there's only room for one sodomizer in this town, and so he was also acquainted with my instruments of ass destruction. Due to my persuasive ways, he also gave me a lead on a train robbery. Maybe they would have the Vaseline. We rescued Sadie from her cabin, which was now on fire due to the friction caused by my fist impacting multiple sphincters. Red Dead 1 got molested by a bunch of wolves whilst on his way to the store, so me and Javier went to find the big soggy sack. Said wolves also wanted to molest me, which in many states is still legal. On my first attempt, they succeeded, and my trachea had its first taste of wolf spit. My second attempt went much better, and my foot fist tore those dirty furries new furry assholes. As we attempt to flee Molester Mountain, the molesters just keep a-coming, and so using my horse's fist, I trample their hopes of a long life. We head on over to an O'Driscoll camp to find any leads on the train robbery. With any luck, maybe I may even find a golden ticket too, so I can see whether an Oompa Loompas cock really is as orange as Donald Trump's forehead. I also drew a cock in the snow. This would be the first real challenge for Mr. Fister, a gangbang of anal orifices just ready to be pounded with my big manly fists of eternal pleasure, but too much of anything, as they say, is a bad thing. Now was time to see whether too much fisting induced pleasure would indeed have ill effects to these poor gentlemen's longevity. The answer? Yes. Extensive fisting is bad for the mind, body and arsehole. We found a picture of my thick ass, which was exactly what we'd hoped for before heading back to camp. On our way back was a fleeing O'Driscoll and me with my penis as long as my IQ is high, so a solid 3.5 on both scales. I knew I could take this scum down using only my fists. So that's what I did. My horse performed a tactical momentary gravity shift resulting in the consumption of piss-soaked snow, and then I was able to do the Lord's work and I put that dirty boy into the ground. So apparently 3.5 ain't so high in IQ. Anyway, failure number 1. I was forced under much anal duress to use something other than my fist, and so I did use the lasso to complete this task. I know, I'm a filthy little whore, and I will suckle from the nearest religious authority's teat to repent for my sins. I trussed that pig up like Dorian Gray and dumped that filth into the dirt. The camp was getting kinda hungry and we were all out of spunk, so hunting it is. Charles hands me his G-string holder, which smelt like home, and we headed off to get dinner. This mission caused severe mental distress, and when I told my therapist that trying to fist a deer was as as easy as selling second-hand butt plugs, he asked me to leave.
Get out
I
of
tried
here.
mounting up and mowing them down, but Cockstar made sure that wasn't an option. With little hope left, I became a slut all over again and used the lasso with mixed results. But then, like a hillbilly 6-year-old's birthday party, I finally got to fist a deer. It was possible, so I restarted the mission. I became the molestee, as the deer took it in turns having their way with me, but it came down to the survival of the shittest, and I took down 2 deer and returned to camp. Anyway, the time had come to rob a train, and the Wild West in me now had an erection. The plan was to blow the tracks, but because the only thing Bill was able to blow was his load, no matter how hard he smashed that like button, nothing happened. So instead, we jumped aboard the choo-choo shit wagon. Lenny fell off cause it's fucking Lenny, but being the hero that Gotham deserves, I stepped up and helped the little fella get it up. However, this would be a decision I would soon live to regret, as Lenny took more beatings than my childhood. Soldiering on like the true champ I am, it was eventually possible to fist my way to the conductor. Seeing something long and hard, my instinct was to tug on that bad boy and see what emotions I felt. The train stopped, and now it was time for Lenny and the ass-fucking reloaded. IMDb 7.6 out of 10. Lenny died many times in this section, but that was a sacrifice I was more than willing to make for the greater good of Mr. Fister in his quest to be crowned Fister of all humankind. At times it took me a little while to find a suitable hole for my 10 clenched fingers to call a destination, but through dedication, cocaine, and sufficient GPS coverage, the destination was set, and it was a place called Asshole. The posse made big scary noises to pant shit the guards out of the train, and with the heavy clenches of my fist, shit their pants they did, and they emerged shaking and smelling of malnutrition. I politely requested that the guard keep this on the down low, to which he amicably agreed. I went back to tug on that long thing again, and my britches soon became sticky and somewhat savoury smelling. Brokeback Mountain was as cold as Frozone's puckered starfish, and so we set sail to warmer climates. On the hunt for honest work in the town of Valentine, one of Fister's bitches got into a spot of bother, so with my silver tongue and purple helmet, the bother was no more a spot of. I met a groupie of the Fister's pussy posse, and I signed his cast because we would be nothing without our fans. Off to the saloon to meet up with the lads, and I offer this busty lass a ride. On
These nuts.
Bill gets a bit horny fisted, and nothing piques my erection like men fisting men, so I get stuck in too. I beat one guy till I, he, or both of us come, and then it's time to take on something a little bigger, which goes well. Unfortunately for him, I come from a long line of men fisters. My daddy fisted men, my granddaddy fisted men, my great-granddaddy fisted men. I was born a fister, and he was to feel the wrath of a many-knuckle fisting like he'd never received before. Having beaten the incest out of him, it was time to move on and help out Reverend Swanson. A quick fisting was the dish of the day, and Baldy here had just gone large. His meal was served and dessert was on the house. A passerby saw the events that had just transpired and was a little shaken. Nothing a warm cup of cocoa and some comforting words wouldn't sort out though. Swanson got stuck, so I gave him a farewell blowy. He got unstuck, and now he has leverage on me. Well played, Reverend. After removing any remnants of the priest's holy fluid from my mouth and anus, it was time to find out where Colm, the head of the O'Driscoll trouser snake, was camping out. We castrated our captive O'Driscoll, and he led us to the camp. And with the Lord Seaman within, I took out all of the guards first try because I am, as they say, a big strong boy. I take a door to the nose, and my life is saved by the testicle-less Kieran. I hail him a cab, and then I head back into the cabin to smell me some O'Driscoll lingerie. One of the gang had been captured back in Blackwater, which by all accounts went about as well as Epstein's new kindergarten, and we form a plan to rescue Sean. Charles didn't get the memo and ended up on the wrong mountain, but as they say, when life gives you lemons, shove them up your dick hole and go to A&E. First attempts went poorly. I got fisted. I wasn't allowed to go up the hill to reach the mountaintop molesters. I tried using a human meat shield, and doing nothing ended up with yet another fail. That was until my brain became erect once more, and like a phallus on the stairway to heaven, I too had made it to the top, where the molester would now become the molested. Or so I thought. Every time I would lodge my fist inside the gentleman's anus, I would fail the mission, and so again, the lesser evil felt like the lasso. But due to the heartbreaking story of an old man kidnapping a child and talking dog and floating away on his balloon house of anal pleasures, I was unable to look up. I haven't seen it. So like a used condom, flaccid, useless and lying amongst the trash, I was forced to fail again, and I shot the final molester in the toe in the hope I could fist him when he fell, but I was not to know his toe fetish was his weakness. My asshole bruised, I soldiered on once more and fisted my way to Sean's freedom and sent him back to camp. Dutch Oven told me to get Lenny inebriated to the point of expanding his sexual horizons, and so I roofied us both up to see whose asshole would dilate first. I fixed the loose floorboard, danced until my nipples chafed and lactated, then got kinky with Lenny. I've got a family event coming up soon, so I removed the contents of my stomach. It's a great diet. Eat whatever you want and none of the calories. Profit. Strauss was owed some money for his donated sperm, but as we all know, sperm doesn't grow on trees. So I paid the sommelier of spunk a visit to claim what was rightfully ours. Hosea gave me a horse to sell, which I did, and purchased a newer model, and tried to name her Something Long and Hard, so I could say that I've been riding something long and hard for hours, but I fucked up the naming, so it was just called So for a while. I corrected it later, but apparently something is profanity, so I called her your daddy. Now I can say that I've been riding your daddy for hours instead, which I like better anyway, so happy little accidents. We rode on to commit vile acts of bestiality against a bear, but in this universe, I was the animal and the bear was the human, and boy, did he like it rough. From that day forward, even the most obtuse of spine angles would result in a turd just sliding down my leg. My sphincter was ruined and could no longer hold back the onslaught of feces it once used to be able to. During a prompt, I also used a knife on the bear, which I'm going to call a permitted use under Rule 3 of my Geneva Convention. I didn't stay to fight the bear because I had no more tampons in my purse. Another connoisseur of Strauss's delectable gunk hadn't paid for the pleasure of owning such a substance, and so I was sent again to collect. We discussed payment plans, and then he gobbed down my throat. Yuck. Mike Cock Bellend had been in prison for selling his testicles to minors, but we all make mistakes, so I helped him to Houdini the shit out of his cell, and now we were forced to deal with the law. Lucky for us, I had 8-finger attorneys at law, and both thumbs up my asshole, so dealing with these pigs was like doing up Velcro flashing shoes. My teachers could not control their own moisture. Micah died a couple of times, but as we're dropping a fat one in a public bathroom, there's always collateral. Escaping Strawberry was a little more troublesome, as your daddy struggled to take the plowings he needed to for me to succeed. This meant again that I would be forced non-consensually to bend over and take another fucking. I took it gracefully as your daddy watched on, but I was hurting. This was another failure, but I ventured on nonetheless. I went to knocking on a former lover's door to collect my Best of Rick Astley record, but in order to get my record back, I needed to help her brother out, and so that is what I did. He'd become a Boy Scout, and though he'd come to love his new life of daily prostate massages from his superiors, I needed Rick to know that I was never going to give him up, and that nothing would stop us from being together forever. So I choked out the leader until he ended up with sticky thighs, and chased Jamie to the train tracks where I did everything within my power to stop him from taking his own life. Forced again to use a gun, I disarmed Jamie and we both rode your daddy until your daddy finished us both off. I got Rick back and with it an erection and spoke with John about a train robbery for which we'd need industrial quantities of lube. I arrive at the lube aquarium and the Gwyneth Paltrow gooch scented lube is heavily guarded. I make my play, take out one guard, and through sheer tactical genius, the lube wagon leaves. I hop on and the job is done. Gooch scented lube acquired, I make family friendly shadow puppets with Jack when I'm interrupted by bowler and highly probable wife beater. My gooch senses tingle as the time nears to show Thomas the Tank my wank engine, and I pose for GQ's most fuckable man, of which there will be no competition. I'm forced to beat the passengers with the butt of a gun, which I'm going to categorise as a force multiplier under Rule 4, and if you think otherwise, tell me you love me in the comments, and I'll tell you I love you more. Onwards now, and Sean has become the new Lenny. He was violated repeatedly, weaker than Batman's masculinity. It took only the wrong pronoun to knock him down for 69. The main issue being the rooftop rapist, who would cause great damage to poor Sean's tender rim. I tried climbing up there to show him how babies are made, but Sean the delicate petal died. After many attempts, I once more had to dirty my once perfect aura with a tool of impotence, and got back to fisting to cleanse what little remained of my soul. I pillaged Thomas's internals, and then it seemed we had company. At this point, point, I did indeed contemplate finding the nastiest ribbed zucchini I could lay my hands on and inserting it into my anus, as it would have been more comfortable than this next fight. My posse were weak, and they held me back in my voyage of fisting discovery. Unlike a small child that can be left alone in a hot car for extended periods of time, my gang could not, and they died many times. I tried ignoring the enemies like a suspicious lump, hoping they'd just go away, but they didn't. I tried fisting like I'd never fisted before, but someone would die. I tried yeeting the guards off their horses in quick succession, but someone would die. I tried running to the train rub and tug go choo-choo shaft, but someone would die. I tried the lesser smegma tainted evil lasso, but someone would die. I even tried ejaculating until I could no longer walk, but it was all futile. I had to use a gun, and so I did. I'm a filthy dog, and I shall repent by letting Sister Mary peg me into next Ramadan. I escaped with my shriveled penis in my pocket and met with Micah Bellend. We were going to rob a stagecoach, and I was unable to rip this scrotum from his horse. That was until I realized it was Micah. Yes, I am a professional gamer. I have a drawer full of wank rags to prove it, so... I got a little too close to the coach and I fell off your daddy. I fisted a horse and the favour was returned, and then Mr. Fister was back in Fist and Furious, and I didn't need guns because I had family, all 10 of them, and it was time for them to meet the soft flesh of my enemy's ass cheeks. But oh no, now we were getting robbed. Oh how the tables turned have. I did need some hemorrhoid cream after this mission, as I burst many a vessel in the deep nethers of my dirty love tunnel. Cockstar seemed to have made it mission impossible get fucked protocol to get any further without at least shooting a couple of enemies, and so despite many an attempt to realign my nipple chakras, I again had a gun pointed at my little mother, and I used a tool of heathens to do what I must. After doing the devil's bidding, I could now claim my prize, but the lockbox was locked, and having already taken a pretty heavy mouthful of Satan's special sauce, I refused to use a gun again. The lasso may have fell from my waist in an attempt to open the box, but in the end, it would be Micah that would rescue me from this moment of erectile dysfunction. John decided it would be fun to herd sheep, so in the same vein, I downed a few shots of bleach and snorted some Lego. Of all the missions, it would be this one also that I would fail again. I needed to scare the farmers, and so instead of sharing with them the wart I have growing in between my anus and my ball bag, I had to shoot near them. I tried leaving them, but I failed. I tried riding down to them, but I failed. So 2 shots were fired, and I felt dirtier than the brown side of a thong. Sheep delivered. Now it was time to meet with Dutch Oven in the saloon, but unless we were ordering a round of anal hurt, we were going to be disappointed. Lashitica's pawn ball arrived with John and Strauss to let us know he'd been crying out of his dirty hole once he'd learned that we'd robbed from him, which was a bit awkward. Avoiding the use of a gun didn't end well for John and Strauss. Neither did trying to disarm the guard, neither did shooting him in his toe, so a headshot it would have to be. My Rule 3 chastity belt prevented me from feeling too much like a dirty schmeg, though this cleanliness would unfortunately be short-lived. Dutch, John and Strauss each took it in turns to be used like a truck-stop glory hole, and me the helpless wall stuck between a cock and a hard place. After countless dickings, I had to draw upon Rule 4, the permittance of a force multiplier, and to put an end to my eternal suffering, I also had to shoot 2 guys as they left the buildings, as they were causing my failure every time. No matter the length of my penis, I could just never get to them in time, so bullets were required, and I made a checkpoint. But the initial dickings were merely foreplay, just a couple of truckers noticing a curious hole on the wall and wondering what would happen if they were to stick their Johnson in it. What was to follow was an all-out gangbang. What was once a single glory hole now resembled a game of whack-a-mole, and my ass was the mallet. I failed again, and this time I failed big. I shot the town up and eventually escaped from Valentine. Having disgraced myself, Fister's posse needed to find a new home. On our way, we found a fatherless family, and being a true gentleman of distinction, I offered to go and find said father. They gave me his anal circumference for identification purposes, and I set off to complete my good deed for the day. I found a male with what seemed to be a matching dilation, but before I could remove my calipers from my satchel to confirm, we were ambushed. It was a straightforward fisting though, and I returned Mr. 47mm to Goldilocks and Augustus Goop. Dutch Oven and the gang arrive, and we waste no time in getting involved within the community. First up is helping the sheriff with some escaped convicts, and though they tasted the results of drop soap before,
maybe I'll just knock you out and take your butt.
They hadn't yet experienced the 8-knuckle fucking they were about to receive. My first try went well until I fell off, but learning from my mistakes and with a heart full of semen, I tried again and succeeded. I took out the Andersons and fisted a guy in the meat coach. I dropped off the now flaccid Anderson Anderson and got to live out my childhood fantasies delivering erotica to rich people and protesting for better tampons. Live mice, though warm, were becoming impractical. Off to Shrek's homeland now, where we are to shut down the Moonshine Distillery. I tug a guy off and beat his meat and bottle another guy. This arouses me, so I bind him ready for occupancy of my basement of sodomy, Thor, love and thunder. I blow up a still, which is arguably a breach of the rules, but I'm calling a technicality timeout on parts requiring explosions because though a clap from my ass cheeks can be heard through time and space, I suffer from anal impotence, which makes it difficult for me to perform publicly. The clap gained the attention of the Lemoyne Raiders, whose assholes were themselves raided by my calloused sausages. We liberated the remaining moonshine for ourselves, as nothing boosted our chances with the same sex like mood-inhibiting chemicals. Me and Sadie had been to get a pregnancy test, as I hadn't had my period in like 36 years when we were set upon by the Lemoyne Raiders. After Sadie dying many times, I finally came to the conclusion that this could not be done with only my fists. I cried, came again, and spat my butt plug out. I fisted where possible and dirtied my soul further by using a gun. I'm hideous. Back at camp, an uncle tells me of a coach carrying payroll, so we roll out to intercept it. A backup coach arrives, and we're left with our pants round our ankles as another dicking fast approached. We did our utmost to hide our tight little sphincters, but the law, with the nose of an anally incentivized bloodhound, found our asses and wished to pitch their tents within our lower intestinal tract. Well, I'm afraid I don't consent to that, and so I took the guard out, and this ass of a situation had just become prolapsed. Guards came pouring in, and I had no means of escaping the confines of my temporary residence. I did nothing and failed. I lassoed and failed. My friend, I was again forced to use a tool of the erectionally challenged. I took names so I knew who to refer to as I masturbated to them later on, and then it was time to leave. Bill became a determined turd desperate to escape his walls of ass cheeks and bust a new anus for us to escape through. The guards followed, and unleashed from my bondage straps, I was once more free to fist my way out of this prolapsed anus of a mission, and met with Lenny to discuss said prolapsed anus. He also told me of a place where we may be able to rob some cash and weapons. Yuck. This is where Lenny placed his delicate anus upon a pedestal for all of mankind to spank, and spank it they did. His ass was beaten raw, and no amount of cupping of his cheeks was going to stop that. After many a failure, I conceded once more. One stick of dynamite and a generous dose of daddy's fistings later, and that place was clean enough to eat my ass from. We ran into some raiders on the way out, but nothing a little social distancing couldn't rectify. Back to camp, and I was peer pressured into robbing the Bank of Valentine. My prostate tickled. It was time to rob the bank, and so I led the teller to the vault, but it would seem my prostate had been tickled to the point of climax, and I beat the teller to death before he could open the door. Anal beads adjusted, the teller survived this time, and I entered the vault and took what was wrongfully mine. We left with a few ingots safely stowed in my prison pocket and managed to escape the law. And that, I think, will do for part 1. Stay tuned for the next one to see if I can indeed beat Red Dead Redemption 2 using only my fists. I mean, I think the answer's pretty clear, but who knows, maybe I may polish a genie's helmet and wish for the ability to not be a disappointment. Anyway, thanks for making it this far, and let me know below which of the Fisters posse you'd let fist you. Bye.